The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. At that time, Jesus came to Jericho and intended to pass through the town. Now, a man there named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector and also a wealthy man, was seeking to see who Jesus was. But he could not see him because of the crowd, for he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree in order to see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When he reached the place, Jesus looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly, for today I must stay at your house." And he came down quickly and received him with joy. When they all saw this, they began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to stay at the house of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I shall repay it 4 times over." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a descendant of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Well, this is the prayer of a humble person who truly understands the meaning of grace. Dear Lord, so far today, I have done everything right. I haven't gossiped. I haven't lost my temper. I haven't been greedy or grumpy or nasty or selfish or overindulgent. I'm very thankful for that. But in a few minutes, Lord, I'm going to get out of bed. And from then on, I'm probably going to need a lot more help. Amen. Dr. Carl Menninger, who is a famous American psychiatrist, was asked to treat a woman who had severe depression. He decided to visit her in her home. He found her slumped in a chair. Her house was very dark and quiet. She admitted to him that she'd struggled with depression since her husband had passed away several years ago. And so as the two of them were sitting there talking, Dr. Menninger noticed that the woman loved violets. They were on every windowsill in her house. Pots just filled with these beautiful little purple and pink and blue flowers. It led him to an unusual prescription for her. He asked the woman to look in the local paper every day and to send a pot of those violets to anyone who was experiencing a major event in their life, be it a birth or a death, maybe a wedding or a graduation. Within a month, the woman called Dr. Menninger, and she said that her life had changed dramatically. The people who had received these unexpected violets were often very much overwhelmed by her gratitude and thoughts. They would write back to her and thank her. Some even sent her little presents. Some even came to visit her. Over time, people began to call her the Violet Lady. Her life was changed because she had replaced depression with an action of service toward others. Now, when we experience disappointments in life, when we have to face rejection or failure, it's really easy to slip into a depression. We keep playing over and over again in our minds the way things used to be, the decisions that I should have made, or the words that I could have said. Questions keep streaming through our consciousness. Why did this happen to me? Could I have done something to avoid it? Why is my life unfair? Such questions are certainly understandable, but they're largely questions that come with no answers. Instead of helping us, they tend to pull us down even into more sadness. So how do we cope with this kind of discouragement? How do we pull ourselves out of a sort of pervasive depression? Well, denial doesn't work. We can for a while think of other things, but sooner or later the sadness washes over us again and we find ourselves right where we started from. Positive thinking, well, that's good, but after we've looked at the many good things in our life, our pain returns and it takes up center stage. Even prayer doesn't always work. Sometimes we ask God to remove our sadness or our pain. That prayer only reinforces the things that upset us and continue to draw us down. The surest way out of sadness is action, doing something, taking on a project, giving ourselves in service to another. When we act, you see, we take the focus off of ourselves. Action, you see, redirects our pain, producing good for ourselves and for others. Such action refocuses our lives, and it pushes depression aside. Dr. Menninger knew this, and that's why he prescribed this action for the violet lady. Zacchaeus, in today's gospel, knows the same truth. If anyone had reason to be sad or depressed, it was Zacchaeus. Everybody in Jericho avoided him, shunned him. They tagged him as a sinner. His good actions were either ignored or ridiculed. And when Zacchaeus heard that Jesus was coming to Jericho, well, he could have easily have chosen to do nothing. He could have easily said to himself, what's the use? Why would Jesus want to have anything to do with me? When he couldn't see Jesus because of the crowd, he could have just thrown up his hands and really sunk back down into a self-pity. But that's not the choice that Zacchaeus made. Zacchaeus chose to act. He ran out in front of the crowd, climbed up in that sycamore tree and made a fool of himself in the hope that he would maybe have a chance to meet Jesus. And his bet paid off big time. Not only did Jesus see him, but he called Zacchaeus to come down from that tree. He wanted to stay with him. I think Zacchaeus is a model for us. When we get stuck in our sadness, Zacchaeus tells us that the way out is not sinking or sighing, but by acting. The way out is doing something, by throwing ourselves into motion for our own good and for the good of others. The story of Zacchaeus tells us that action not only will push our depression aside, but it also leads us to Jesus. And when we meet him, Jesus will say to us, "Today salvation has come to this house, for the Son of Man has come to save the lost." When we are lost in our sadness or in our depression, the gospel shows us the solution. Like Zacchaeus, we should rise up from our self-pity, climb out on that limb, and run out to meet Jesus in the good things that we choose to do. Amen.